Good morning, Inkwell. How are we feeling? Fantastic. So now we're following a double Olympic champion, so there's no pressure. We're happy that you're here. We're thankful that you're here. We wanted to have a conversation today talking about culture. As you've seen in Inkwell and across the different beaches at Cannes, there's been a lot of talk about technology. What we wanted to do was talk about culture and talk about creativity. We feel there's a need for that conversation to be championed, and I've brought an amazing set of friends to help to do that. They're going to introduce themselves. I'll quickly start by introducing myself, and they'll tell you what they do and their perspective on culture. So to start, I'm Justin Thomas Copeland. I am the founder of Kindred Global, which is a creative and strategic consultancy that intersects technology, culture, and creativity. And it brings that to brands at scale in a very authentic way. I'm previously the president and CEO of DDB North America, and have run other creative and data agencies across the world. So I have a perspective on many of the things that our panel is going to talk about. I'm going to ask Andrea to start her introduction, and then we'll go down the line so you can understand what everyone does.
I'm Andrea. I worked for Justin in my past. I am Andrea Diques. I'm the global CEO of GUT, and I am originally from Venezuela, and I am very, very happy to be here. Ready to rock.
Ready.
Ready.
Hi guys, my name's Ibrahim Kamara. I'm from London. London people here? Yeah, lovely. Yeah, I'm from London. I'm a co-founder and CEO of a platform called GWOP, which is a youth-led magazine that's dedicated to discovering, showcasing, and nurturing emerging creative talent, especially those from underrepresented communities. And we also run an award ceremony called the GWOP Gala, which is, well, newspapers call it the Met Gala of the UK. And it's an award show for celebrating creative talent across the industry.
Beautiful. Glad you're here.
Pretty awesome. I'm Dana. I'm the global managing director and partner of a proudly woman-owned business called Mesh Experience. We're a measurement agency. We focus on understanding how people interact with brands in their everyday life, not just marketing and advertising, but across all touch points and channels. This is real talk. So I'm a mom of 2 boys, probably the only vegan in France right now. So, and yeah, I'm really excited to be here. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for being with us.
Hi guys, thanks for having me. My name is Clay, founder of Very Rare Agency and creative director, Amsterdam-based agency. And yeah, what we do is we do a lot of brand campaigns for brands like Jordan. We collaborate a lot with other agencies abroad like RGAs, and yeah, so really excited to be here, and thanks for having me.
Great.
Hey all, I'm Oriel Davis-Lyons. I'm the Chief Creative Officer of Mother New York. I'm also the founder of One School, which is the first online portfolio school for aspiring black creatives, and founder of a little apparel brand called Corp Leisure, which is kind of work from home wear, which maybe we don't need this week so much. You know?
Excellent. So look, I wanted to start the conversation by just sharing some of the sources. As we've been talking about this panel, we were really keen that we wouldn't be talking just tech. It's really about creativity and culture and how that merges or is leveraged by technology. Just some reference points that I wanted to share with you all in terms of when we talk about where culture's going, I think there's a conversation to be had. We need to keep on thinking about ideas. I want to talk to the panel about ideas and how they see ideas and the types of ideas that move them and they think moves culture. I was talking to Marcus Collins yesterday, a friend of mine. We're going to talk about marketing and how marketing's shifting. We hear a lot about influencer marketing. We hear a lot about content. We're going to get a view from the panels as to how that plays out in their respective worlds. And the reason why we have agency leaders as well as platform owners like Ibrahim is because I think they have different perspectives to bring. And then the last thing we're going to touch on is just the role of AI. We would be remiss not to talk about it, but from a standpoint of how are you using it and what are you doing with it, right? So beyond just the actual technology, but how is it being applied to drive ideas and drive culture? So that's what we're going to try and cover. We're going to start with something really easy, right? I promise the guys we'll start with something super easy. So the first question is, as it relates to culture, what do you see moving culture in your respective worlds? That could be campaign work, if you want to talk advertising, it could be music, it could be fashion. I just want to get your take on what do you see as moving culture, and who do you think brand-wise is doing a great job doing that? So I'm going to start with, yes. Go for it.
So I was thinking about that, right? And I think that's something, and I'm going to talk about this week. And what I think I've started to see, I've been coming here, I don't know, for a long time, since 2006, 2007. And the amount of, and maybe you've heard this before, but the amount of judges, the amount of creatives and people in general and creators that are here that are not from, that are diverse is incredible. It's absurd.
Right.
So I think that if you're working at an agency, if you're working for a brand, if you're working everywhere and you don't have the people that are, the group of people diverse enough to make ideas, they will not win. They will not even get to the palais,
Right.
So if this is a place where creativity is like, admired and you see pieces of work that impact the world and change the world, you don't have the diverse teams behind it, it won't even make it there. It won't make it anywhere.
And have you seen work that you think is representative and does move culture? Is there anything that stands out? What would you pick?
I would say, listen, there's a piece of work from Orange that is about women's soccer.
Right.
It is absurd. I was like, I'm so jealous of that idea. You
Right.
see a game, it's men's football, and then suddenly, you actually figure out that it's women's football
Right.
and the women player in France, right? And it's just like, wow, men can't believe that those were women making those plays, right?
Right.
So I think brands have to do that more. I'll give you another one that I love, that I talked about the other day, and it's from the agency, so I'm just proud
Your
of it.
agency.
Yes, very proud of it. And it's for, in Brazil, 53% of the population is black, right? A lot of black people in Brazil right now are going and graduating from university, much more than in the past. Problem is that when they wear their hat, for the graduation hat, they can't wear it because of their hairstyle, which is the most absurd thing in the world.
Right.
So they take their pictures with their hat here. So a hair brand came to us, let's do something for the hair brand. All right, let's do this. And so we partnered with a designer and launched in Brazil Fashion Week 5 different designs for birrettes. Is it called
Yep.
birrettes?
I think they're called grevels or something. Grevels, yeah.
I don't know what they're called. In Spanish, it's birretes. So I just made that word up in English.
Beret is
A beret.
is a
in
is a
French.
word. In French. Yeah.
Beret. All right. So 5 different designs, open source. It's become a law, and every university in Brazil have to have these designs available for students. So I think those are ideas that impact the world and shape culture.
Beautiful. Ibrahim, I'm really looking forward to your perspective. Tell us.
I think from my perspective, the people who are like creating culture and like moving culture are the individuals not trying to create culture or move culture. They're just doing their things. One thing I've realized a lot is that there's like the creative industry,
Right.
and then there's the creative community.
Talk about that.
Places like this is creative industry. Like
Okay.
it's like the people who actually work at the brands, they work at the agencies, all
Right.
of those kind of things. But then there's a whole community of people who are creatives that just got up and just picked up a camera and they went with their friends and then they started shooting each other, or
Right.
they're doing campaigns with about their fashion brands, and
Right.
it's very authentic to them. And there's like a big disconnect between the community
Okay.
who are in the creators in that community,
Right.
and then the creative industry. And I think a lot of the times the culture is actually created from the community part,
Right.
but then the industry try to emulate the things they see from that have been created from the community. And
do you, because I don't know if everyone knows Guap, but it's a creative content tastemaker platform, right? In many different forms. Do you get the industry coming to you to try and, I don't know, partner, build, or emulate?
Yes.
How do you experience that? You mentioned the gap. Talk about that gap, because it's not spoken about a lot.
we're in a position where we came from the creative community side, so like we didn't start with no money. It was literally me. I had a camera. I was going out shooting people. My business partner was doing the interviews. Very off the cuff, DIY. We got to a point where we built this community of creatives, and brands started seeing that the future of this industry, and in terms of like Gen Z and millennials, is creators. And there wasn't many platforms in the UK that have a big audience of creatives, especially those from diverse backgrounds. So all of the brand stuff that we've done have come to us. We don't even have a sales team. It's literally just us putting out work that is authentic to us and our audience.
Right.
And the brands come to us. And I'm talking brands we've worked with people from like Instagram and TikTok, all the way to Coca-Cola, to Lloyd's Bank, to it's literally so diverse, but it's all been authentic work that we've created, and then it's followed on. So yeah, I genuinely think the things that move culture seriously come from the outside, and then it influences the things that the
brands
agencies
do.
and the brands do.
Got it.
I would say, yeah.
Dana, love to get your perspective.
Well, first off, I thought that was really interesting, those two different perspectives. What I've been seeing a lot at Cannes, and also what we've been doing a lot of work on, is around women's sport. And I really feel like the girls are coming for us, and I'm loving it, loving it. You know, we're talking about the gaps, we're talking about the differences. You know, we're addressing some of those things that are, you know, physically prohibitive for women as well. So I feel like there's been momentum on this, and culturally we're hopefully at that cusp to propel forward. So a lot of really great talks this week, and most of them were actually around women's sports. So I think for me that's what's standing out.
And because, just a question for you, because you're helping brands understand the consumer, right?
That's right.
Mesh came from an idea of brands have got to change how they measure value.
That's absolutely right.
What are you seeing in terms of brands' ability to understand their impact in culture? How do they measure that? Do they measure that? Are they asking you the right questions? Like, what's the real story behind that?
Okay, yeah. Listen, there's a lot of different ways that you can measure your impact of, you know, your cultural strategies, right? But I'm biased, of course, because we focus on experiences and how people integrate brands in their everyday real life. And, you know, we think that that's a superior measure, because I'll give you an example. So in the US, let's go back 4 years. I don't want to talk about COVID, but let's assume it's like May 2020.
Right.
And you're a big brand, you've got this amazing campaign, and it's hitting all the marks, right? 5 stars, your pre-test is looking great, it's emotional, you're bringing cultures together, you're you know, you're hitting your brand KPIs, people are going to be driving, yes, go, 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 everything's telling you this is the right thing. You put that campaign out May 20th. 5 days later, May 25th, 2020, George Floyd is murdered. All of a sudden, the context of that is so out of touch. And it is culturally damaging. It's brand damaging, potentially, right? So we have a saying that if content is king, then context is queen. And we know who runs the castle.
Right.
The queen runs the castle,
Nice.
right? So measuring for us is all about understanding every day the context in which we live as people, not necessarily the bubble that as the industry we live in, which is, you know, channels and media and whatnot.
Got it. Clay, talk to us about culture. Who's moving it for you guys? What are you seeing?
What I see now is obviously culture is all about the communities we belong to, and it's where we connect. And I see there's a big shift for brands to really be in the early stages, including the creators in their process. I feel that it's not a one-way brief anymore. You know, I think you can't do that anymore now. And I think especially how everything is getting more accessible for the new upcoming creators, it's really important, and that's a big shift, I think, for brands, and a big win, especially with AI coming up. So I feel that that's one of the biggest changes that I see now, is that, yeah, it's important to have young voices within your brand, and that I think that's different, and I see that around here in Cannes. So yeah, I think that's definitely a big change now.
Got it. Oriel, tell us about your world in Mother. What's happening culture-wise?
It's interesting. I've been thinking about just even the word, right, culture, and I feel like there's an issue that we talk about it in the singular kind of tense, right? We talk about culture, and I think it's different to the culture, you know, and that's like, we know kind of what that means. But I think at the moment you're seeing this like decentralization of culture, and the things that usually kind of are like anchor points for it, right? And I guess when we all were probably growing up, there were like physical spaces, right, that you could kind of build a culture around. You know, like I grew up in Britain in the kind of 90s and early 2000s. I was part of, you know, like West Indian sound system culture, right?
Yep.
You had Notting Hill Carnival, you had garage raves, you had all of that. So you had like physical spaces that represented that. And I feel like those have moved, you know, like there are still those spaces, but culture now kind of exists primarily online, and it is a collection of references, right, that people can piece together. So I feel like even just the phrase talking about a singular culture is challenging, right? Because each of us up here, when we think of culture, we have a different collection of, you know, references and moments in our head. So I think that, you know, I agree with what Ibrahim said. I think there is a gap right now between the industry as you see it here and the people who are kind of, you know, really making the things that we are ultimately kind of, you know, drawing inspiration from. I think as a company, all you can hope to do is have like a much more kind of fluid relationship, you know, with that creative community, right? And this is partly what we're trying to do at Mother, and this is kind of, you know, the work of the One School, right, is kind of bringing those people who come from a much more organic creative community into the industry, right, and giving them a sense of like, okay, the things that you create and the references that you have value to us, right, in the industry, and we make that a much easier conversation, much more kind of fluid conversation. But I think right now it's just like, how do we build a team that represents not culture as a, you know, as a singular thing, but the, damn. All right, little intermission.
Adrian, can we do anything, or do we just start dancing? Okay, I'll go and visit them afterwards. So look, here's the thing, right? In terms of, I don't mind the music. In terms of brands and that gap, how authentic have you seen, or do you believe that brands are in their bid to be part of culture? We hear brands talking a lot about wanting to be in culture and wanting to drive that. Where do you think they are? Claire, I'm going to start with you on this one. Where do you think brands are in being connected to culture? How do you help them do that?
I feel like now you cannot, like culture is such a, like what you just touched on, it's just such a buzzword. So I feel like it's all about community, and I feel that's really important. So yeah, like I think at this moment,
Keep going.
I think at this moment it's really important to include a deeper layer into your team. I think shadow boards really helps. So I feel like brands are now also more open to have those voices, and I feel like that's what we're doing at the moment with Very Rare.
Ibrahim, your experience with brands, and helping them be in culture. Share us how you do that. How do you do that? How do you get them into culture authentically?
Well, with Guap, internally, when we create content, we always work with our audience anyway. So like we have an audience of loads of different creatives, and when we're shooting our own editorials and our own stuff, we're working with them. But then on the brand side of things, we realize that this whole industry is like based off nepotism.
Right.
And it's kind of a thing of, if my friend is a photographer and I'm the one that's the producer, I might choose you to do it. You might not be the best person to do it, but I'm going to choose you to do it just because you're my friend.
Right.
And in the UK, again, there wasn't a lot of platforms that managed to basically get on that side where you're able to like be the decision maker on who actually gets these jobs.
Right.
And we said with our agency, we kind of want to be one of the places where all of the creatives that we cover on the magazine, when we do get campaigns from brands,
Yep.
making sure that talent that we've seen through the magazine who are really sick, but probably have never had someone be like, oh, you should be the one to get this job, or you should be the one to shoot it.
Right.
Using the power that we have in those rooms and just saying, yeah, this is the person we want to use to bring our vision to life, and then basically bridging that collaboration. So we've given a lot of creatives their first like big campaigns with brands and stuff. But ultimately, it's not even like a charity thing. The people are sick at what they do. So it's just like connect.
Sick means good.
Oh, sorry.
It's a London term.
They're great at what they do.
Yeah, yeah.
So
good.
just bridging the gap and just being the facilitator for that connection. That's how we do it.
Beautiful. At Gut, Andrea, are you doing anything differently in terms of being connected to the creator community? Are you bringing that into the agency? Are your teams moving out and building bridges into those communities? How's it happening inside the industry? You hear about the creative industry and the creator community. How are you, as an agency leader, how are you bridging those gaps? Or are you?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I mean, if not, we would not be relevant at all today, and we wouldn't be able to make our brands grow. So we have creators in the agency. We let them be. You know, it's really interesting because when you try and merge the creative department with the content department, we call it, where the creators are,
Right.
it just doesn't merge. They're all friends, but you can't make them part of the creative department. They have to be we call it the content department.
Yep.
They're different, right? They're faster, they're nimbler. They know everything that's happening in culture. I have to say that at Gut, what I've seen, right? I've been there 18 months already, is they're so in tune with what's happening in the world and in every community, be it, food, music, entertainment. They're just nerds. They just know everything that's happening. And then suddenly when I'm, reviewing something and we're sitting around and they start, riffing, it's like, okay, I want this, I want that, and you're like, I didn't even know that existed. I can't be the one creating for, kids that are 12 because because I can't. I can be almost a 12-year-old sometimes, but I can't. We need the creators in the agency and, trying to bridge that gap because, and again, our clients need to understand that that's the way it is.
Yep.
So when you come up with something, right, there's something that happens in the agency where, somebody notices a trend or somebody likes something or something's happening in music or in a country or in a community. We grab it at 9 a.m., right? Somebody comes up at 9 a.m. At 6 p.m., it's out.
Speed of culture.
Speed of culture.
Right.
And you go through lawyers, you go through brand teams, and it's all, what's up?
Right.
Boom, 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 I have this idea, and that's how fast it happens sometimes, It's like...
Do you think that speed, and I'd love to get your take, and then I'd love to get Clay, you talk about this. Do you think that very same speed of culture and the amount of content, do you think that's helping culture, though? Do you think some of that is a lot of noise? Or what's your view on just there's a lot that you can see, there's a lot you can consume, there's a lot of things that people think is highly creative and great ideas that isn't, right? There's a lot out there. So do you think that's a problem? Do you think that's a problem in terms of building brands making mistakes? Do you think that's a problem in terms of creators thinking that they have the creative acumen to do, and to build brands? Do you think that there's a misstep happening, or are you happy for the amount of content we see, the amount of ideas that we see? Do you think it's all hitting the mark? Like, what's your view on the quality? That's a qualitative.
I don't think it's all hitting the mark, but I think that people are trying.
Okay.
And I think that it's good to try, and it's good to make mistakes. If you don't make mistakes, you don't learn. And I think that, and I think consumers will always, if you're trying and you're really trying hard and you're not, appropriating yourself of stuff that is not real, and you're trying your best to be part of a community and make impact, people will even, be okay if you make a mistake. Consumers will be okay with some brands that make mistakes. Sometimes they make mistakes because they're idiots, brands
Okay.
and agencies. But sometimes it's just, it just happens. So it's like you have to keep it coming and you have to say sorry and you have to admit it and then you keep going. So no, I don't think it's bad. I think it's good to put a lot of content out there. Sometimes it doesn't get anywhere, but we try.
Got it.
Yeah,
Clay,
just
I'd
to
love
add
to get
on
your
that,
perspective on that.
I just think now with the platforms that we use, everything is there's heavy consumption. Content is getting shorter as well. So I do think it's good, and I also think now with AI coming up, it's more about not about like, hey, my job is gonna be taken about due to AI. I think it's time to get more creative even, and I think brands should also be open for that and co-create. You know, so just what I wanted to add earlier is that projects that are resonating more are projects that it's not about culture, so it's more about community and really including that. And that's what we also been doing with the agency, really tap into Paris, for example, giving smaller organizations also the chance to co-create with Jordan Brand. So I think that's what resonates more, and it's more better than just chasing KPIs and just looking at it from a figure point of view. So yeah,
Got it.
I think it's good.
Dana, in the consumer in all of this, where's the consumer? What are they looking for? What do they want? What are you advising brands in terms of navigating content and being at service to that hungry community that wants the content? What are consumers looking for?
So first, I'm gonna challenge us.
Okay.
Because I heard something this week about that noun consumer, and it really stuck with me. And it was from our friend Shingy.
Okay. Oh yeah.
And he said, "Stop calling them consumers. They're human beings."
Right.
And I use that term, right? Like we all use it, but actually, I feel like if you really want to understand culture, identity, and how to connect, you have to start from the human side,
Right.
So I'm going to challenge myself to not use that term consumer.
Good
right?
for you. I follow you.
And so we do a ton of research. We do a lot of thought leadership research. You know, I'm probably another one of those nerds up here. And I've been schooled a lot in the learnings that we've had. And one of the things that came out of some really epic work that we did all around culture and identity is that there are kind of two distinct factors when you're trying to create this strategy, right? A culture forward strategy. And one is that you have to understand who people are and what they're like. And those are two very distinct things, right? Because if you ask me who I am, I can say I'm a mom, I'm a business owner, I'm Italian American, I'm a daughter. All these things are factual. And if you ask me what I'm like, I could say, I'm sassy, whatever, right? Right? And I would like to think that shows up in every way, shape, or form of how I present myself. But actually, we are a kaleidoscope of identities within our culture, right? And it is within that subtle difference of who you are versus what you're like, where there's a little bit of room for negotiation, and to your point, opportunity for failure to learn and to correct. Because you can't debate the facts. But you could say to me, well, I have actually never thought of you as somebody sassy. Probably would be incorrect. But, I perceive you as this way because perception is a very unique reality. So the one thing that we try to tell, our brands to do when they're creating this strategy is to really understand, their audience and who they are, but what they are like.
Right.
And then the second thing is that, culture informs your identity, but identity doesn't necessarily inform your culture. And so it's really more important to have a diversity of identities in your marketing strategy rather than ethnicities in culture, right? So we really try to make sure that our clients are asking the right questions. They're asking the right questions of the people that they wish to engage with. And if they don't know, they're not necessarily asking one person who's going to confirm their biased opinion on what should happen. That they're asking, a diversified set of questions as well.
Got it. In terms of, and Ori, I'm looking at you, my friend. In terms of understanding the human, so we grew up where brands would come, they would tell you the humans they wanted, they would give you the portrait of the human, and then you would execute whatever campaign, right? With the fact that you can learn so much through the creative community, go into market, testing things, using AI, are you changing how you're your teams are conceiving ideas, campaigns, helping brands? Is anything changing inside an agency like Mother that's putting the human, that's really trying to understand the human, rather than just doing what we've been taught as swallowing the brand book, the brand segments? Are you doing things differently to start from a different place? And are you reaching out to anyone like a Clay or a Ibra to get that insight on the communities, or are you building it in-house like a gut? What's happening? How are you doing that?
It's a bit of both, and it obviously depends on the brand, right, and what they need and the audience that they are trying to reach, right? And I think Mother benefits from having obviously big kind of brand relationships that go back a long way, but also having a pretty deep relationship with the creative community, the artistic community. So I think a lot of the time we're able to kind of tap into, like if we need to get a deep dive on a specific culture, we have that ability. But if we need to kind of do more like qualitative audience, more traditional research, that kind of stuff, we have that. I think like with the splintering of culture, like you used to get like that audience profile and it would be a very specific person.
Right.
I think that feels like a pretty dated way to kind of, start a brief now. But I think there are still genuine, you have to start from a place of real human insight, right? Like, and you kind of say, okay, we're all motivated by the same thing, even though we might express it differently, even though it might show up differently in our, individual kind of communities and daily culture. And so I think that's kind of where we focus more, is like, what's the thing that's going to motivate all of us, right? What's the thing that's going to interest all of us and get like an emotional response, rather than kind of, to your point, starting with like almost an avatar of someone, right? Which then kind of takes you down a very specific executional route, right? And whereas if you start with, okay, what are the things that sit above that and that drive your kind of internal motivations and your emotional, responses, you just get to, I think, more interesting things that then can be expressed in a lot of different ways depending on how the brand wants to show up or where they want to show up. And I think for us, that's been a shift, is just like moving away from this kind of place of like, starting with a consumer as a avatar and starting from a place of like human insight, human emotion, and what is going to actually motivate people to, give a shit.
Ibrahim, you guys, your community gives a shit, excuse my language. Like you're deep, you understand them. Are you bringing new understanding to brands? Are you having different conversations? Are you realizing that what you have is something unique in terms of that insight? What's happening in your world in terms of what you're bringing to the table for brands and culture?
I think prior 2020, there was a lot more having to explain the power of this community. Because I remember there were certain campaigns where we've put forward certain talent. This talent actually has like 2.3 million followers now.
Right.
But before they didn't have that. And
so you're ahead.
No, that's not even the point of this one. This is literally like they didn't. I remember having conversations where I'm having to tell them, no, it's good to have this person, and going back and forth with a brand. Where now, because the new generation is the most diverse generation that we've probably had, there's not a lot of places that have authentically been built in that time. A lot of people are trying to convert to actually now know how to speak to this audience rather than actually being built in it. So when brands do come to us, because they know we've been built in this time, it's not really, they know what they're coming to get from us. So it's not really a lot of debate. So if they ask us, when we're putting together a brief, responding to a brief, and we're putting forward talent and putting forward a creative, it's hardly challenged because they know that we know what we're talking about within this space. But it wasn't like that all the time. Yeah.
And how are you using that are you now leading brands then? Like, is there a shift? Are you saying there's been a complete shift, or are they just nodding their head because like you guys know better than they do? Because there's a difference in the two. Brave brands will let you lead them to new places. Brands that just want to be part of the party, they'll just nod and say, well, you must know, right? You know what I mean? Like there's passive yes, and there's inclusive and, contributing to that yes as a brand. So
yeah, I think so. I would say it's a collaboration.
Okay.
Rather than us leading them.
Right.
I think it's putting forward our faves. They might have particular reasons internally why they might want to work with this person, or they might want to do things in this way. And it's about coming to a middle ground. I don't think it's a you know better, I know better kind of thing. It should be a thing of us bringing our expertise, you having your expertise, and then coming to a middle ground to actually do things in the best way, because there's certain things and certain values and certain things we bring, there's certain things they're going to bring. And I think the optimal thing for everyone is us creating with both of our expertise rather than one person saying, I know better than you kind of thing.
Got it, got it. You've mentioned AI and technology. I want to understand if that's changing how you're collaborating with brands. So maybe I'll start with you, Oriol, in terms of thinking of an agency, right, and all the different tools that are out there. I mean, I've just put this up. There are a lot of tools that you could be using, right? Voice, video, text, etc. How are you using that as part of the creative process? How is that changing how you're bringing cultural nuance to the work you do? Like, what are you doing with AI in a real sense that is starting to make a shift? And I know it's early days, so we're not looking for the whole chapter and verse, but are you starting to encourage that in your teams, and how's that looking?
Yeah. And I guess aside from like the specifics, the tools, I think what we've started to talk about is looking at it less about like generative or what specific tool. It's like, what's the point of using all of this stuff?
Right.
And I had a conversation with someone a few weeks ago that kind of like really unlocked this whole like thing, in a way. And his phrase was the goal, for all of this is to try and find like spare creative energy, And you think about, it's not time saving, right? Because I think that like implies that you're going to use those extra minutes for just like more work, right? And you're going to fit more in. And I think what we're starting to talk about is like, what tools do we need to generate spare creative energy that can then be put back into the thing that, we provide, the value that we provide most, And I think, so there's like a collection, like we've got, everyone's using, ChatGPT, Midjourney, whatever, generative AI, like that's kind of just a daily thing. But I think what the journey that we're on at the moment is looking at the process from like the first phone call that we have, with a potential client to the last, ship, asset that we ship. Like where along the process can we save some creative energy and generate that spare energy that can then be put back into the thing that we do best, as opposed to just like, let's save some minutes so that we can kind of fill it with more busy work.
Right.
Because I think the temptation with all of this is to do that, right? It's just to kind of save time.
Right.
But unless you know what you're going to use that time for, and unless you're going to use that for something that's going to be genuinely adding to your value, like the thing that you do best, that you can bring to a brand or to the community, then it's kind of almost like it's pointless. So,
Clay, how are you guys looking at technology? Is it helping you? Is it helping you scale the business? Is it helping you with your reach, with the community? What's happening in your world?
Well, we're embracing it, but we use it to better our workflow and processes, and definitely it also helps with working remote because we collaborate a lot with agencies from the States, for example. So it does help, but if it comes to creating, we're really rooting into stay true to our creative skills. So we don't really use AI on that side, and I do see those are also tools that other brands like TikTok, for example, are embracing right now to really push that. But it's still a bit shaky. I'm not sure if we're gonna ever use a human face to translate a speech, to different markets. I don't think that's the right thing to do at the moment. But we would still reach out, still keep it authentic, and I think that's what I still believe brands should stick to.
Andrea, from a tools perspective, how are you using that in Gut? Is AI, is it an efficiency play? Is it what Oriol's saying? Is it freeing up creative capacity? Is it helping you with the creative community? How are you using technology?
Listen, we use it a lot, actually. The creatives use it a lot. What for? I don't necessarily know. But they do use it. And we've created internal tools that actually help creatives get to data faster.
Okay.
Right? So, and it's quite fast, right? I see these articles and it's like, this group is spending 300 million in this. I'm like, well, we have like 3,000, so we do it in Argentina. We create the tool in Argentina or with our team there, and it's helping us. But I don't think you can replace humans and feelings, and AI doesn't have a heart. They haven't died. They haven't had anybody die. They have, so the creators are still the core, and the creators are still the core of what we do every day. But they do use it.
Got it. Ibrahim, your community's heavy people first. I've been lucky enough to go to your studio in London, see how you guys work, how you collaborate. I've followed your galas. Heavy human focus, heavy human connection is what's built GWOP, I think, from the ground up. Are you seeing that being disrupted by AI? Are you looking just strategically to leverage it, to scale up? Do you want to scale up? Like, it's fascinating because you've got such a deep set of relationships. You could extrapolate this using any one of these tools and just scale it by 50. But do you want to do that? How does a platform like yours and a creative community like yours, how do you think about AI when you haven't necessarily got to cater to the big brands and the next big campaign? You guys are doing many things. What's it look like for you?
I think internally we've used AI mainly for language. Sometimes you might have like an idea and you might just write down certain words and certain phrases or have a way of saying things. We've actually used AI a lot to help us with the translation of our ideas into a language that brands understand. So
That's interesting.
yeah, so like, let's say if I describe something the way I speak naturally,
Right.
I might use AI to just convert it in a way that a brand might understand when we're doing our decks. So just summarizing our things in a more cohesive and way that's more understandable.
Right.
So that's one way. And then in terms of our audience, we have thought about it, but I think it's kind of what Clay was saying. I think because we are community-led and we do work with creatives, I think using AI to kind of replace some of the creative things that those people bring is kind of against our moral compass. So I think we would use AI to increase efficiency, but not to replace creativity, I would say.
Got it. Dana, what's your perspective on us understanding the human? How are you thinking about it?
Yeah, I mean, we use AI in very similar ways as well, right? To drive efficiencies, automation. There are some really cool semiotic AI tools, to help you digest and understand form and function of language, which is really important. But when it comes to speaking to, humans and engaging and having that relationship, that's something that we haven't considered replacing yet. There's a lot of pressure to do that, though.
There is, right?
There's a lot of pressure to do that.
So talk a little bit about that, and then we'll ask you to say, talk about that pressure, because that pressure is real. No one's talking about that pressure, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, sometimes you just kind of feel like you're constantly defending, your end game. You're defending being basic, I suppose.
Right.
Being more human. And it gets really tough, especially as a smaller agency, competing against and working with big clients who are getting a lot of feedback from bigger brands of, we should do it this way, or you should look at it that way. And but to come back to what you were just saying, Abraham, about just being firm in our kind of moral and ethical stance right now. I mean, who knows what will happen in 5-10 years as the technology edits and changes. But let's not forget that, when we're talking about humans, 33% of the world's population is offline still.
Right.
So like everything is digital, but not digital isn't everything.
Right.
Right? So especially in culture and when we're making these big decisions, the more that we forget about the human aspect that's driving the AI, and the more that we, just lean towards generative AI for everything, the bigger we're going to widen that gap between whether it's, for social or cultural reasons, or for economical reasons, or for, systemic reasons people aren't online. You're widening that. You're getting further and further away from the real truth in the real world, and it's in that I feel like brands are going to be creating these like synthetic cultures, right?
That's my worry.
Yeah.
And I hear that loud and clear. And Claire, I know you believe in that. Andrea, I want to give you a moment just to say it.
I wanted to say, I think it's like, one of the things that I am doing in the agency right now, and we're getting ready to embark in a really basic research method that has worked for my whole career, which is you sit down with a consumer or human
somebody.
being, and you spend 2 days with this person, their family, their friends, and understand how they actually live life. Because our, teams, count, creative, strategies, some of them have never sat with real, live families
Right.
that consume our products.
Right.
So it's like, because they just look at everything online, search it. No, they say this, 20% do this, 40%. Say, no, what do they feel? When
Right.
you go to a supermarket and you have $100, for 2 weeks to get food, what are you going to choose? Have you been in a supermarket with that person? So we're going to do that. It's happening in July with a
Beautiful.
bunch of the people in the agency.
Beautiful.
They haven't done it. I did, because
Right.
you had to do it that way at the beginning of the career, right? So I think it's our responsibility to get the young ones to experience more people.
Got it. Is there and we've got probably going to finish on this one. And Oriel, I'll start with you. Is there a tension that's brewing? So Dana mentioned synthetic cultures, right? Andrea mentioned that people haven't been with the humans, with the consumers. They don't know how they live their life. We talk about brands need to understand feel and emotion, which you could argue is the antithesis of where the world is kind of going and how the world is scaling, right? It's less human. It's more about the rational side of things, right, than the emotional side of things. And I think there is an argument for synthetic cultures or just cultural noise, right? What's your biggest tension that you see, that you're preoccupied with? I mean, you lead Mother creatively out of New York, and that's one of the bastions of creativity, right? Is there a tension that you're thinking about that you think you're going to need to resolve or help your agency navigate around? Or are you happy are you moving forward with the flow and then you'll kind of decide pragmatically? How are you seeing that? What's the tension that you see?
I mean, I think the thing that maybe keeps me up at night sometimes is that with the tools, right? I think synthetic is a good word, right? The ability to create a lot of assets and fill the kind of like, cultural space with stuff, that is then the reference that we pull on as an industry, right? And then put that back into the world, and then we draw on that again. And I think, like, not to kind of, get up and be like a champion of history, but knowing where things have come from, knowing the history of a reference, the history of an artifact, of a piece of music, and being able to trace that back is definitely, I think, at danger of getting lost, right? Because you don't need it, right? You don't need to kind of have a deep understanding of photography to be able to pull a deck together of photographic reference and get something made, right?
Yep.
And in some ways that democratizes it, and it opens it up to people who have not had the privilege of learning the history or whatever. But I also worry that that we start to just become so self-referential, and that the things that we're referencing are not actually grounded in reality. That everything is going to be a version, is going to be 2.0, 3.0 of something that already that was not real to begin with. And I mean, you see it with music. Like the Kendrick Drake
and
thing, right?
And the culture wasn't having it. As soon as
Yeah.
they heard you see it online, right? The reactions.
Yeah.
As soon as they heard Tupac's lyrics being taken, everyone was like, they're not having it. But to your point, that self kind of rapid and rinse and repeat.
Yeah. That only happened because there were still people, right? We all still grew up with Tupac, right?
Right.
Like on tape or
Right.
on CD,
Right.
right? But there'll be a point where that's not the case, and no one will recognize that voice as being part of rap history, and that's kind of I think as it starts to get untethered from real physical kind of artifacts, culture, that we then we're not sure what we're referencing, and we're not sure if we're referencing is even real or not, and that's
That's powerful.
it's a bit deep.
Clay, what's the tension that you're thinking about that's giving you pause? Is there attention? What is it? Share it with us.
Well, we started the agency, first of all, 10 years ago in Amsterdam because we felt that there was a lack of representation within brand campaigns. So initially, we were always human-centered and focused in our projects. So we're lucky enough to be one of the fewer agencies in Europe to work on campaigns for like Jordan or go to the community in London and really make an impact, highlighting NGOs and organizations, helping them as well. So like, I do feel like AI is a great tool. We still use it a lot, especially on the workflow or cluttering a lot of information, you know, like, and go straight to the action points. And also what Ibrahim said, to use it for decks. But I do think that our culture is not like, it's not for sale, but it's also not really something you can put into AI. So definitely also what you mentioned, the human side of it, and it's very important. So I do think it's really important, and also dealing with bias, data bias is something really important to be really cautious. So yeah,
Yep.
that's something that I'm still a bit iffy about. So
Beautiful. Dana, what's your tension point in terms of tech, culture, creativity? What's keeping you? giving
Yeah,
you
I mean,
pause?
I think it is still just the forgotten, right? Like this gap of where do we go from here? And I think Oriel put it great. And I just had this aha moment of like, we're going to be in version 2.0, 3.0 of like our lives pretty soon, and that's wild to me. And you know, I mentioned in the beginning of this that you know I'm a mom, right? 2 boys, and I always think about what we're creating and how that will impact them and how they live their lives moving forward, and what content they're exposed to, and what sort of cultures, synthetic or not, are they growing up with. So there's like this responsibility, I think, of brands and marketers that go well beyond your relationship with me or your agency or whoever it may be, because you're impacting and influencing society. So that tension point for me is a good opportunity to slow down, to speed up. Instead of just rushing through the amber light, just take a pause, you know, and check in with yourself, check in with your strategies, check in with humans, right?
Got it. Ibrahim, what's your tension point as we wrap this up?
Quick one. I would say, I think AI gets really smart really fast. So I think the smarter AI gets, the more we should get close to real life stuff. And because AI creates stuff based off something like we were speaking earlier before, the human interactions and the little nuances we have are going to be like the few differences we have to make really original ideas that they can't base the AI off. So I think we just have to keep doing as much things as we can to get close to the real, and like that.
Don't get tricked.
Yeah, don't get tricked.
Don't
Yeah,
get
basically,
tricked.
yeah.
Andrea, Gut, one of the most creative agencies. What's your tension point in all of this culture, creativity, AI? Is there a tension point that you're thinking about? What is that?
Listen, I think it's the same as everyone, right? It's like, it's how to maintain, you know, your humanity and your being in touch with humans and communities, and not just be automated. You know, I think it's attention for everyone. And then, you know, I was sitting with a client the other day, and what he said to me, I said, "What keeps you up at night?" You know, and he said, "Well, a lot of our AI tools are not able to predict the real, you know, results of our work, right? So before they used a lot of testing, and you know, you had a lot of testing that you would put in a commercial, and they would say, well, it's going to be great, and you know, 50-80% of the time they had it right. This time, sometimes it's not working. So that's what he's a pretty important client, global client. And he's like, that is what keeps me up at night. We're not able to predict what's going to happen in the community, so we have to be closer and closer and closer to you know, people than we've ever been."
Beautiful. I love that. For me, I think that's the takeout from hearing you guys. Staying close to the community is super important. I think AI is learning about cultures and will always be infinitely learning about cultures, because human nature, there are so many things that we learn about ourselves every day. And I think I'll probably finish on what Ibrahim said, which is just recognizing the real. And I think you've got to take that to your brands. And I think you've also got to think about how you learn from each other. So that gap you mentioned, Ibrahim, at the start of the creator community and the creative industry, no one's talking about that gap. And I think if that gap can be bridged, there's a lot of good that can come in the world. I think we avoid the synthetic cultures, and I think the work gets even stronger. So thank you all for being here. Forward Friday at Inkwell. That was real talk, and bless you all. Thank you very much. And thank you all for assisting. Thank you.